Hi, everyone. Welcome to the APQC webinar, Shipping Hope and Help, Logistics for the Good. I'm Marisa Brown, APQC Senior Principal Research Lead for Supply Chain Management, and I will be your moderator today. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers. We have with us today Enrique Alvarez and Kathy Fulton. They will be sharing uplifting examples of how the logistics industry has been changing the world for the better over the past year. I thought this was a timely message as we close out 2022 and end the year on a positive note. Enrique is the Managing Director of Vector Global Logistics, and Kathy is the Executive Director of the American Logistics Aid Network, or ALAN. I want to thank you both for being with us here today and sharing your stories. And before we dive into our content, just a few details for everyone about today's webinar. The conversation will be about 45 minutes or so, and we will have time for question and answers at the end. Please submit your questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A tool in the Zoom interface. We are recording this webinar and we will share the slides and the recording with you following the session. If you have any technical issues, feel free to contact me or the APQC host through the chat. And now, let's dive into discussing how logistics can ship hope and help. Enrique, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Marisa, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for this invitation. I'm excited and ready and happy to share a little bit of the story of our company and myself. And of course, big fan of ALAN, and so I'm very honored to be also with Kathy. Let me start. There's a little lag there. There. So first thing that I want to talk about is a little bit of the journey. So it's really sharing our experience and we started the company in 2009, my background's in strategy consulting, and I tell a little bit more about me and the company in a second, but I just want to make sure that, as the video said, this is a very interactive session. Please feel free to interrupt me, raise your hands, ask as many questions as possible. And of course, just any comments are also welcome. So first thing is, for us, logistics is another vehicle for changing the world. And what that means, before we even started the company, before we were thinking about opening a logistics company, we always wanted to do something for the world. So I'll start this presentation telling you a little bit about why logistics is so important to me and to everyone at Vector, and why I believe supply chain is such an important industry for everyone around the world. Because at the end of the day, as we all have seen very clearly during the pandemic, it touches everything. It touches the computer that I'm using, the microphone that I'm using, the earphones, the pen. Everything we have has a logistics component attached to it. Nothing is necessarily manufactured where the end consumers are going to be buying it. And so for that reason, we thought that logistics could be a good starting point for a purpose-driven organization like ours to make a difference in the world, to change the world, and to try to really make a little bit more of a sense in terms of where we're heading with our company and where the world is heading, and some of the things that we can do to just make it a little bit better. So with that said, I will start with why we do what we do. And for us, that question alone is critical to shape the entire organization, and years of hard work are always boiled down to why we do what we do. So for us, it's very important. And for us, we believe that we can change the world. We say that we just happen to be in logistics, but if you ask every single employee that we have here at Vector, everyone will tell you that the thing that really binds us together, the thing that brings us together, the passion and the reason why we get out of bed every morning is really just to try to change the world. And for us, it's very important that we not only take that into consideration, but use it on a day-to-day basis to shape the company that we are and to try to make an impact around the world. There's tons of things, positive and negative challenges, opportunities, and synergies that we need to realize are happening, and we are using our company to truly leverage that and to truly try to make a positive impact in everything we do. So before I jump into the next one, I just want to say that we are perfectly okay in sharing why we do things, and we're perfectly okay. I know that some organizations out there might be a little bit more skeptical as of to take sides or to speak out in certain controversial things that are happening around the world. But being in logistics and having an international logistics company gives us not only the opportunity, but I think it's a responsibility to truly understand the world that we live in, to truly understand and have partners and friends and agents and clients around the world. And I think that with that kind of awareness of what's going on in the world, it also entails a certain responsibility. And so for us, it's very important that we speak out, that we state why we do what we do, and to make sure that everyone that works with us, not only employees, but also clients, suppliers, the banks, anyone, really understands what we stand for. And I'll ask Lachlan here to help me with the next one. I think Marisa or...
So we should have a video starting shortly.
Okay, perfect. There you go. All right, so I just wanted to share a little bit of the things that we've done this year, and I'm clicking on the next slide. But it's important that we start with the why. And once we understand the why of a company, of an organization, and I think everything else falls in place. And we truly believe that a few caring people can and will change the world. So, oops, I think I stopped sharing my screen for some reason. But anyways, so once we have the why and the purpose, then we started to figure out how are we going to structure the entire company to make sure that that why is achieved, and to make sure that the next one, to make sure that we can put together a company that will not only try to change the world, but at the same time is profitable and can grow sustainably. And we actually did it with basically three main drivers, or three values, if you will. One is the one that I just mentioned, which is very important, is why we do things and the logistics with purpose. The other one is a results-based mentality. So we're basically took the time and space out of the equation, and we're measuring
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
results.
If you can take your seats and we can
And
begin, because we've
only.
got the live web stream running as well. So we've got people watching online.
I have to... I'll wait a little bit just to kind of mute the background. There you go.
Apologies for that.
No worries. Well, I take this opportunity to see if there's any questions or comments out there that anyone wants to share. All right, Marisa, if you can start fielding some of those, that would be great. But the third thing is just passionate about people. We really want to improve people's lives and building long-term relationships with everyone we work with. And I'll deep dive a little bit into each one of them, and I'll tell you a little bit about our experience going through them in a second. I think if you can give me back the control, there you go. So I think I've gone through slide 7 and I still haven't really introduced our company, but I think that was very important that we basically understand why we do things. But we are an international logistics company. We have a very unique results culture, and as you guys already know, a passion to give back. Our main services in general are everything that has to do with supply chain, from ocean shipping, air shipping, trucking, customs brokerage, expedited services, trade show services. We have presence, our own team in 7 countries. We have people in the US, in Mexico, in Chile, in China, Vietnam, Malaysia, and we are going to officially launch Peru starting January. So we're very excited about that. And on top of that, we have 150 agents around the world through the various relationships, partnerships, and networks we belong to. The key industries that we really focus on are project cargo, automotive, aerospace, renewable energy, medical devices, and of course, purpose-driven organizations that really share our passion for changing the world and making it a better place. So in terms of who we are compared to other logistic companies, we're a very boutique kind of niche company that focuses on very specific things and has a very unique culture. All right. There's a little delay when I click the button and when the slides change, so I apologize for that. But I will get to the next one soon, I hope. Yes. Oh, did I skip a little bit more? Well, no, let's. Okay, so I'll show you. So I told you a little bit about the why we do what we do. I explain a little bit of some of the impacts. So kind of seeing a little bit of the giving back strategies and initiatives that we have been working on for the last year. And then I will show you next a little bit more about the more specific things that kind of make our culture and company unique. And then also what some of the experiences that I've had kind of working through this logistics company, hopefully sharing some of the different examples and experiences will help everyone that's listening to this conversation, and hopefully we can inspire some of you. Hopefully you can get some ideas on how to implement it to your own companies and your own organizations. So the first thing we do is for every container we move, we are basically donating a portion to it to different organizations around the world. We have partnered with 3 different organizations officially at a corporate level, if you will. One of them is Serve, and we are donating 50 meals to children in Kenya and Dominican Republic for every container that's shipped out of the United States. In Mexico, we have partnered with an organization called Canica that helps children with cancer and their families. And in Chile, we have partnered with Quanil, an organization that helps and supports children with special needs and their families, in particular through one of their schools that they have in Iquique. So for every container that each one of these regions ships, we're donating to very specific causes. And these are things that are done at a corporate level. And where we're deciding on some of these organizations is by, once again, talking to everyone at the company, making sure that we're incorporating their feedbacks, making sure that we incorporate their purpose and their feedback into what we're doing. Now, at the lower level, or at a regional level, and even at a city kind of level, we are working with each one of the teams so that each team that we have can also support different causes. And that's how you end up supporting 34 organizations throughout the year. So we have some corporate support, and then we also take it down to the smaller teams that we have, and we ask them, what are you passionate about? And we try to leverage our company to support not only the things that from a corporate standpoint we believe are important, but then also the things that people are passionate about locally. And so we have worked with animal shelters, and we have food banks, and sorting books, and going to homeless shelters and donating different things. So it's important if you think about it as a culture and how to build your culture in your organization. I think it's very important, critical, that once you set up to become a purpose-driven company, that you let everyone in your company decide what the cause is, what the purpose is, how does that look for each individual? Because of course we all take different causes dearly, and there's no right or wrong. The second thing that we do is really just providing world-class services to our partners. And again, we're do everything from very specific projects, like the case that we're showing here, like the airplane, for example, or the paper mill that we had to ship to Saudi Arabia, but also to other interesting projects that might be a little bit more humanistic in nature, like the relief efforts to Zimbabwe, or some of the things that we're doing in Ukraine. Going back to the culture, this is very important, because this is allowing us to grow as fast as we're growing. And I would make a quick pause just to strongly recommend you to buy or read this book. It's called Why Work Sucks. And again, it just it says that you have to take the time and space component out of the equation, and you measure performance by results only. So we are holding everyone accountable. Everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing. We agree on certain goals for the next month, the next quarter, the next semester, and the next year. And as long as people are reaching those milestones and are actually reaching those goals, we pull back and don't worry about anything else. So it's not about coming to the office at 9 a.m. It's not about leaving at 5. If it takes you 20 minutes, then go play golf the rest of the day, go shopping, spend time with your family, go to the beach. We don't really want employees to work just for the sake of working. We don't believe that. So we believe that it's important that we have certain things and certain goals, and we have to accomplish them. Some people might be better off working in the morning. Some people might be better off working at night. So we don't really care when are you most productive. We don't really care how you manage your workload. We trust that everyone is an adult. We trust that everyone's pulling in the same direction. We know that everyone understands why we do things. And then it's really all about measuring results on a monthly basis, having a couple of performance indicators, measuring them, and then giving a lot of feedback and holding people accountable. I'll switch quickly to one of the very, I guess, more key examples of some of the things we're doing with the Ukraine, and then I'll tie it up with once again just speaking up and really using our company and this platform that we have to take a side. And not everyone has to agree with the sides that we're taking, and we're respectful, and we believe that it's important that we all listen to each other, more so these days, which I'm guessing we'll see this, how polarized our communities are. We believe that we need to listen to each other, but it's also equally important as a company, as an organization, as individuals to say exactly what you stand for, and then support your causes openly and freely. So right now we're supporting the war in Ukraine. Since the war started, we started shipping a lot of products to the Ukraine, and we're have shipped about more than 500,000 pounds of supplies so far. We have partnered with different organizations, and we started coordinating these monthly calls that I would love to invite everyone. I'll send the links, so we'll have them on the notes at some point, in which we basically just open up the forum. A lot of companies and organizations and individuals join those calls every month, and we're basically matchmaking people that have things that can help and people that want help and need help. And it's been incredible. At the end of the day, we believe that it's really up to everyone. This is not something that we're doing. It's something that we're just taking a part of. And we believe that that people really want to help in general. So If you know of any organization that can donate products that could be useful to set up refugee camps. I mean, right now it's winter, and that's going to be a big challenge for everyone in that part of the world, in Ukraine, Poland, and around that region. So if you have anything that could potentially help kind of people in that region of the world, we're currently donating 2 containers. We'll ship them for free. Just feel free to send me an email afterwards, and I'll connect you to the right people. But we can help you ship some of the products for free. Some of the things that we have learned, and I'll try to then open up. We'll have some time to tackle some of the questions, but some of the things that we have learned are the following. The purpose is important. I really think that everyone in the organization should understand why they're doing what they're doing. And this doesn't only apply to me or logistic companies or our team, but I think in general in the world, I think it's important, no matter how old or where you work, you need to understand why are you doing what you're doing. I think that sense of purpose, it's critical. And I think it's a lot easier to then come up with a good, solid strategy for, again, everything you're doing. In my particular case, for launching and growing Vector, once you align why you're doing what you're doing, and people understand perfectly why are we doing what we're doing. So it's one of those things that every time we hire someone, that's the first couple of months, making sure that they really get the culture, get the values. We can teach technical skills, but I think like having that shared purpose is important, which is the second point. We need to be quick and make sure 2 things. One, we need to be very slow when hiring. So I'll reverse the comment. So first, be very slow hiring, get to know the other person. We have made the mistake of hiring too quickly, and it just backfires. If for whatever reason that person is not the right fit to the company, then you have already spent a lot of time, resources, and training capabilities to someone that may or may not understand what you're trying to do. So just make sure that you get to know the people you're hiring at a personal level. Make sure that beyond the right skill sets, which of course are important, you need to understand where they're coming from like a values standpoint. And then, of course, apply those decisions and values to all the decision-making process. Like, what companies do we want to work with? What suppliers do we want to work with? Who should we promote? So at the end of the day, culture and values, at least at Vector, are something that we talk about every day. And that has, in my opinion, helped us immensely. Now, the other kind of trick to this equation, which closes the loop with being super slow at the beginning hiring people, is we have to let people go quicker. And we have done this mistake over and over and over again. It's hard to fire someone, and I'm terrible at it. And I try to make sure that we give them another chance and try to coach and mentor. And it's fine if the problem is the knowledge, but if for whatever reason it's more like they don't care, then you have to be very, very critical. And one of the things that we need to improve, and one of the things we've done wrong in the past, is we've just let people stay with us for a little bit longer than they need to stay. And again, there's no bad feelings. Being fired by Vector doesn't mean that you're not an amazing employee or a great person. It just means that it's not the right fit, and we just have to approach it that way and let people go a lot quicker when they just don't belong to the culture you're trying to build. The other thing that has helped us, and we also decided to do this from the beginning, is we're very transparent, 100% transparent. And I think this is something that has helped us a lot because it brings trust into the organization. So everyone at Vector knows how much everyone else makes, how much they got for bonuses, very openly. And it's weird at the beginning, right? I mean, we're somewhat cagey when it comes to our salaries and our compensation. But once you go through that kind of taboo, if you will, and you openly talk about these things, it makes things a lot more easier. And so we're everyone that works with us knows exactly how much money we have, how much we invoiced, how much we have in the bank, how much is our collections, how much are our profits. At every single level of the organization, everyone knows how much everyone else is making, what the compensation structure looks like, what the commissions are, what the bonuses are. And again, it just prompts this great communication about certain things that we then take to continue improving. But then at the other end, it allows us to build this very reliable and trustworthy organization. And at the end of the day, also measuring, which I already talked about, having clear performance indicators. Don't overcomplicating those indicators. Just measure a few, 3, 4 that are key, and forget about the rest. Just the ones that drive 80% of the value, and just do that kind of consistently. Goals are very important, and we take them seriously. But I think just creating this system that creates all these habits, and that's what's really going to push the culture forward and make you a very efficient and successful and vibrant organization. I started the company in 2009, and we started with this very incredible idea. But now, through time, I can tell you that it is true. I mean, if you actually build a purpose-driven organization, your company will not only grow faster, but it will grow more sustainably. And of course, after a couple of years of working hard on what we're doing, now we have a lot more experience, and of course, some additional recognition that this culture works. Finally, we're launching in December a letter campaign. A lot of children, a lot of schools have already partnered with us. We're sending letters to children in Ukraine to support them and encourage them, and maybe to try to bring a little bit of humor or some kind of positive vibes, if you will, as they kind of go through the winter, as they go through the war, and as they go through a holiday season that's probably going to be very different from everything that they have ever experienced. So if you're interested, once again, reach out to me and help us kind of spread the word, help us kind of partner with schools out there, and let's just continue sending some letters from children here in the US or in Mexico or anywhere in the world, really, to Ukraine. Thank you so much. And I know that, Marisa, we're going to hold for the questions at the end, correct?
Yes. Thank you, Enrique. That was very interesting. Thank you for sharing your story. And I do want to encourage everyone to continue putting your questions and your comments into the Q&A tool and in the chat. As Enrique said, we will address them at the end after we hear from Kathy. But thank you for sharing with us your very unique story about how you're using logistics to help those in need around the world, and also your fascinating purpose-driven and results-focused organization, Enrique. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now let's shift gears and let's listen to Kathy Fulton. Kathy is with the American Logistics Aid Network, or ALAN, and she's going to talk about how logistics can build resilience and how ALAN creates connections to help in times of crisis and disaster. Kathy?
All right. Thanks, Marisa. I love hearing Enrique's story, and every time I hear about the organization, I am just always so motivated because I wish every logistics organization had that same purpose-driven value system that Vector does. So ALAN was actually formed because there were a lot of organizations who had that purpose in mind after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, but they really couldn't find a way to plug in to the response activities. Actually a group of industry associations, 13 of them at the time, got together and they said, you know what, we can do this. We have the skills and the knowledge and the expertise and the equipment and everything that needs to happen to move supplies around the world every day. Let's figure out how we can help in disaster situations. So we were formed by industry to be that unifying body. And we bring together businesses, nonprofits, government entities, really to put that logistics focus to disaster. We help with bringing the right materials, resources, and information together at the right time to help people. As Marisa mentioned, we also work a bit on supply chain resilience. If I have some time, I have a couple of slides at the end that I want to share just a little bit about how we're approaching supply chain resilience and the things that we're thinking about with our business partners. Every picture in my slide deck has a story. So if there are any of them that you want to know about, I always love telling specific stories, and I'll share some of those stories. I know that at least one of our attendees is familiar with some of our stories. Hi, Michael. It's always good to see your name. But always happy to answer stories about or answer questions about those. So let me see. I know that there's a little bit of a delay in controlling, but let me give it a shot here. All right. So we love to tell people, look, every donation that we coordinate, and I'll talk about how we do that, helps nonprofits save money. So nonprofits were not formed to be logistics organizations primarily. There are a few of us out there, but they were formed to take on a particular mission. And anything that we as a logistics nonprofit can do, or anything that we can work with true logistics organizations to do to help these nonprofit organizations with their logistics activities, is going to save them money. It allows them to focus on their core mission. So let me talk just for a minute about how we do that. We work primarily in disaster response. And we kind of sit between the nonprofit organizations who are on the ground serving communities who've been affected by disaster. And we are that connector organization to help them access the resources or the equipment or the services of those businesses who want to help. So we're that connector convener organization. We ourselves are, excuse me, are a 501c3 nonprofit, as I mentioned, formed by industry. So we're a little unique in that regard. But all we do is try to improve how logistics for disaster response happens. And disaster comes to mean a lot of things. We consider the war in Ukraine a disaster because of the impacts that war is having. So anything really that's causing negative impacts for a community, we want to be there to provide support for. All right. We do work globally. Our focus and most of our logistics partners are based here in the U.S. In fact, most of our nonprofit partners are also based here in the U.S. But we have worked around the globe. I'll show you a map here in a few minutes. But why is this important? I think it's important to recognize that just like our supply chains are global, disasters affect us globally. Who would have thought that a war a world away would have supply chain impacts for the United States, but we've seen it with everything from neon to oil, cooking oils, and petroleum products. All of those things just go to show that as our supply chains are connected globally, so should our humanitarian efforts be connected globally. As I mentioned, just a map of where we work. And I'm going to talk about 3 of our program areas here in the coming slides. So this is our coordination activities, really getting those supplies into the hands of the organizations who can help provide the support directly on the ground. There's a statistic out there. It originally came from a research report back in 2003, 2004. That says that 80% of humanitarian spending actually goes towards logistics activities. So when I mentioned earlier that every dollar that we help nonprofits save on logistics helps them do so much more. On the flip side of that, though, is this statistic that says that 40% of logistics spending is actually wasted. And I think that that's, we know the reasons for that are because because disasters create this need to respond very quickly. Nonprofit organizations try to coordinate as best they can, but unless they are working with an organization, unless there's some oversight to that, lots of different organizations are sending things in duplicate or sending partially filled containers. And so the ability of Alan and other organizations to kind of help consolidate, coordinate, have that visibility for those organizations, still with the speed that's necessary to respond in disasters. That's really important and really critical and part of our mission. You'll see, and I don't know that I actually put a slide in here, but in 2023, we have this big initiative. We're working on some funding for that in order to really, nonprofits organize around some of their activities, cleanup activities and other things. There's no true focus on logistics coordination. And so working with our partners like Michael from Lyft and others and our business partners to be able to do those things more effectively is going to be a big focus for us in 2023. I mentioned some of our other program areas. The coordination work is our primary work. It is why we were formed. But we also very quickly found that in order for businesses to be able to help in disaster, they themselves need to survive the disaster. So we have these other supporting activities that we do. We do educational work where we help write courses for FEMA, which is really helping emergency managers better understand what's going on in disasters, helping them better understand logistics around disasters. We also have this really fun disaster simulation, which I would love to do with any of your organizations anytime, where we, your work to serve a community that's been affected by a disaster. It's kind of a role-playing technology game. All of that is focused on building knowledge around supply chains, building knowledge around supply chain resilience, and for our business partners, helping them to better understand the humanitarian side of the logistics world. And moving to the middle, we have our analysis and intelligence work, our information sharing activities. We also do some work alongside FEMA through a group called the Supply Chain Analysis Network. It's a little bit of a think tank, but mostly it's a contracted capability that at time of disaster goes out and says, what's really happening with the supply chains in the area that's been affected. And that helps FEMA make better decisions and state emergency managers make better decisions about what their actions can be. For example, if grocery stores are back up and running, if food banks have everything that they need, which both of those things are rarely the case, but when supply chains, those pre-existing supply chains have been restored, then there's less need for the replacement supply chains. There's less need for FEMA to ship MREs and bottled water, at taxpayer expense, but also to often the detriment of the communities. Our Supply Chain Intelligence Center is through a partnership with an organization called Everstream. They provide that technology to us and anyone who is affiliated with us for free. It allows you to see the weather real time anywhere in the world. But we've also plotted certain points of infrastructure in the United States, so ports and airports, the top 100 bottlenecks that DOT produces every year. All of those are on the list, so you can very quickly see real-time conditions and predictions about what's going to happen anywhere in the world. And then finally, I mentioned we were formed by industry. We bring together those folks every couple of weeks. We talk about what's really happening in supply chains. It started during the early days of COVID when we were all trying to figure out, okay, what government interventions are happening? What does that mean? Are we essential workers or or how are we responding to that as supply chain and logistics professionals? But really that has continued to occur because that information sharing, this collaboration, just really being able to bring people from all parts of the supply chain together to really think more critically, more effectively about risk and disasters. So I know we're getting close on time. I want to talk just quickly about our Hurricane Ian response so you can see some of the types of activities that we get involved in and why logistics organizations are so critical to disaster. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but all of these pictures represent in some way, Alan was able to support Southwest Florida after Hurricane Ian. And that was everything from, helping a food bank, manage the surge, the inventory surge, but the inventory and demand surge that they experienced after Hurricane Ian. Food banks are a type of organization that's in the community year round. They're not just the response organizations coming in from outside. Those organizations are very important to helping communities recover, but the food banks are the ones who have to be there when the roads are finally clear and the power's back on, right? So helping them deal with the surge in both donations that they receive and the demand from the community. I'll also point out Hurricane Ian was a huge flooding event. I've visited, I've been down there a couple of times. I live in Central Florida, so it's easy for me to get down there. Even still, within the past couple of weeks, you still see piles of debris, mostly items that people have had to clear out of their houses because they were inundated with water and they have to replace those items. They've developed mold. So helping an organization like Habitat for Humanity, who is also another organization that's in the community year round, helping them help homeowners by transporting mattresses for them. They got a huge donation of mattresses, but the expense to move them from the donor down to Florida was a little more than their budget could bear at the time. And so helping to find transportation donors to provide those things. And there are things like, mass feeding activities, helping groups like Operation Barbecue Relief, which is an organization that if you haven't heard of yet, you probably will. They've really grown massively in the past couple of years. Helping them with refrigerated storage so that they could, I think they fed, I know it was over 1 million meals during their course of time in Florida, but at one point they were pumping out 50,000 meals per day. It's pretty impressive numbers. Cleaning supplies, durable medical equipment, transportation of food for those mass feeding sites. All of those things, why do I have these pictures up there? All of those things require logistics. They require either transportation, they require warehousing, they require material handling equipment, they require experience. And that's what Alan can bring to the nonprofit community. And what we do bring is unifying all of those industry associations, unifying businesses who want to help them figure out the best way to support communities that have been affected by crisis. Marisa, I just want to do a time check. I know we're right at 11:45. So before I
You're fine if you want to continue on for a few more minutes.
Great. I'll do that because I want to make sure. I know we have kind of a mix of attendees today, but I want to talk just quickly about why we also focus on supply chain resilience. And I alluded to this earlier in the fact that if there are no businesses who survive a disaster, then they're not going to be able to help their communities. But I think it really goes deeper than that. Enrique said it earlier, like logistics companies change the world, logistics companies move the world. It's true, right? those businesses, especially small and medium-sized businesses, are the lifeblood of communities. So when they are affected by things like, what is it, 15, and this only goes through the end of September, disasters just in the US that have cost more than $1 billion, in damages. This doesn't even take into account, all of the international disasters that occur, which we know, affect our supply chains and affect the small and medium-sized businesses. So anything that we can do to support those businesses, and let me talk just about that. Well, actually, first I want to talk about some of the impacts. I talked about Hurricane Ian and some of the work we did. We'll talk about some of the ways that we're supporting them. So Hurricane Ian affected those small and medium-sized businesses in several different ways. And we talk about this in terms of what is the impact to supply chain. And there's some work that's been done by the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. Did a study after Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. Three of the people I was very privileged to serve on that panel, that committee. Three of those committee members who are educators have also gone on to create another report on supply chain resilience. And they talk about businesses are affected by either demand shifts or supply reductions, or they're in the flow of their goods, either from communications outages or things like that, are disrupted. We were at this point even before Hurricane Ian, where we had started to see that slowdown in the supply chain, but not entirely yet. We hadn't quite caught up. And so all of these demand spikes, fuel and water and cleaning supplies, all of that, all those spikes really had a negative impact on the small and medium-sized business. Those things also affect large businesses. That photo right in the middle of the screen there is actually my local Walmart. Well, not completely, but 99% out of baby formula. And this was past the baby formula challenge that we had earlier in the year, but this was in regard to Hurricane Ian. People wanted to stock up. So, Alan is really focused on how can we help businesses think better about these preparedness activities. We're not planners, but helping them to really focus, through smart actions of thinking about how their business plans can adjust to demand capacity or infrastructure disruptions, how they can participate with their government partners in co-planning, collaborative planning on resilience. Again, we want those businesses to survive so that people can go back to their normal retail outlets. They can go back to their normal supply chains after disaster as quickly as possible. I think, that's the last of my slides, with the exception of, people always say, oh my gosh, you do so much. How can we get involved? Because either our business wants to help support this, or, I want to volunteer. And those are all excellent ways. We do rely on volunteers for about 95% of our activities. All of our coordination work relies on logistics professionals who want to volunteer. There are businesses who, like Enrique's, can donate your in-kind services, whether you are an asset-based or non-asset-based organization. I mentioned we're a 501c3, so we always love donations. Even more, we want to know your stories about the good work that your businesses are doing. I met Enrique earlier this year because we were able to, just thrilled to be able to recognize them through one of our humanitarian logistics awards. We want to recognize the good work that's getting done, regardless of whether that's getting done through Alan or not. We just want the world to know, hey, logistics organizations are really out there doing this. And there are ways to be, do good while doing well. And then just spreading the word about our organization. There's a QR code for you to find out more if you would like. With that, I think I'm turning it back to Marisa for question time.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you again, Enrique. It is so great to hear both of you talk about all these ways that logistics can really help during a crisis, but even beforehand, and how people can truly get involved. So we have time for a few questions. And one of the first questions that someone asked is, well, Kathy, can you just talk briefly, what does Alan do when there's not a disaster happening, when it's not an imminent hurricane or something bearing down on us?
Yeah, great question. I feel like, at least since 2020, there has been constant disaster happening. But in some ways that's true, right? We're either always preparing for a disaster or we're recovering from a disaster. Even today, Hurricane Ian hit on September 28th. We're now at the beginning of December, and we're still working with communities in Southwest Florida on things that they need. But I mentioned a few of the things that we do when we're not in crazy response mode, because it does tend to get crazy at times. That's just talking to businesses about their preparedness activities, helping. Honestly, we've over the past year or so, we've done a lot with helping big municipalities just understand what the supply chains in their communities look like. You would be surprised at the number of communities, and I'll say emergency managers, because that's typically who we work with, who really just don't even know what supply chain or logistics assets are in their communities. So figuring out ways, how do we, to bring those people together, I said it earlier, collaboratively plan, but also just get better prepared together. So that's some of what we're doing, in the down times.
Right, when that happens. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Enrique, we've got a question for you. So you had mentioned that being very purpose-driven was helpful to your company and it helped be more sustainable and all that. Can you explain a little bit more about why you think that's the case, that you're more competitive for having adopted this kind of mentality and approach?
Yes, of course. And great question as well, because a lot of people that talk a little bit about purpose, they always think that, well, they're just nice guys. They're so idealistic. But for me, and with our experience, I am 100% sure that having a purpose-driven organization it's a huge competitive advantage, and it's the best way of making profits. So we're not a non-for-profit. We're not doing this out of charity or the warmth of our hearts. I mean, of course, we are nice people. At least we believe that we're nice people. But doing what we're doing is a very strategic way to profitability. And there's many different areas. But the first one is, if you're a purpose-driven organization, chances are, especially now, they're going to be having good people that want to work with you, because people that are graduating right now, it's proven that they actually want a little bit more than just money. They want to feel that they're impactful. They want to feel that they're useful. They want to feel that there's certain purpose to what they're doing. So if you are one of those organizations, all of a sudden you're going to start picking employees out of a much richer pool, and you become more attractive to better candidates. So you'll end up having like a much better workforce. The second thing is similar, but with the suppliers. There's a lot of suppliers out there that are also more conscious and driven by certain things. And so if you can match the cost, or if you see you share some of the culture and the values with some of the suppliers, then they will want to work with you. And just we have many, and I guess I don't want to say one, because then I'll probably forget about all the others that we have. But there's a lot of suppliers out there in supply chain that are, for example, making sure that sustainability is important, that CO2 offsetting is important, that having a green initiatives and green mindset is important to them. So you'll end up having better employees. You'll end up working with better suppliers that in turn will going to make you more efficient and more successful. And then the third thing is companies out there. There's companies out there, many companies that are really trying to change the world, and they're doing it sustainably. And of course, if you cannot offer them for example, CO2 offsetting capabilities, or if you cannot offer them certain things, then they will probably won't be able to work with you. So you have to be very good at logistics. You have to have the best systems, good at technology. But again, if you're not purpose driven, chances are that you're not going to be competitive in the future.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. I think that with the rise of regulations and things like ESG in Europe, and we'll certainly start to see some of those things here in the US, businesses who are purpose-driven, especially logistics organizations, are going to have significant competitive advantage.
Good point. Good point. And you're right. I think there's a lot of research out there about people seeking meaning in their work and finding that valuable. So excellent point. Excellent point. Well, we have time really only for one last quick question. And I guess it's to both of you a little bit, which is, why do you think more organizations aren't doing this? Why aren't we seeing more nonprofits, more other logistics companies out there trying to make a difference and bring the good to the world? What do y'all think?
I'll start if I may. And it's not easy, is number one. You have to be intentional about it. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the day-to-day busyness of just trying to keep the doors open. I know certainly that was the case for a lot of businesses, especially during the pandemic. Right. We aren't intentional about it. And the other thing is, there are a lot of businesses who are doing good stuff, but they, I would say maybe it's not as broad as what Enrique and Vector are doing. So I'll let Enrique speak to this.
I totally agree with what you just said, Kathy. And I think it hasn't been easy. So when you're faced with the decision of like doing this or surviving, I mean, surviving always comes first, and it's very understandable. Now, I think something that we're missing, or some organizations are missing, is that long-term strategic plan of where they want to be, not tomorrow, not in the next year or two, in the next 20 years, the next 10 years, right? I think that kind of longer term strategic planning aspect of small, medium, and even large size companies is missing, because we're all rushing to maximize shareholder value and right now. So I think that the problem we're seeing, and it's shifting, and it's exciting to see it shift, is that we're still too focused on short-term gains, short-term profitability, and people are being valued and compensated by that short-sighted kind of mentality, as opposed to, hey, your compensation will be for the next 10, 20 years. I mean, build an organization, take the time to really build an organization that will be sustainable and successful, not tomorrow, not in the next couple of years, but for a long time. And so I think that we'll see that shifting slowly. And also there's a lot of, to Kathy's point, there are a lot of companies that are doing an amazing job, and there's tons of really good organizations out there. So it's just up to us and people that want to work with those companies to maybe do a little bit more due diligence as of what company do they want to work with, because I'm pretty sure there's always a good driven purpose organization out there that's ready to do whatever it's needed to get the business.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you both. That's all the time we have for questions. But thank you all for sharing your insights and even your guidance on how organizations can focus on bringing logistics for the good to the world. And I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us. Just a few quick reminders. Everyone registered for today's webinar will receive a copy of the slides and the recording within the next 2 days. And we appreciate if you could take our satisfaction survey when the webinar closes. We do value your feedback. And you're welcome to visit apqc.org/events to learn more about upcoming webinars and other events, and also to watch our past webinars on demand, including this one in a few days. If you have additional questions or you want to learn more or connect, please feel free to reach out to our speakers, Kathy and Enrique, directly. And we would love for you to connect with APQC via social as well. Thank you again, Kathy and Enrique. Thank you to everyone for joining us, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.